Om Danur Grihitva Upanishadam Mahastram Sharam Upasanashita Sanjayita Ayamya Tadbhavakatena Chetasa Laksham Tadevaksharam Somya Vidhi. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Taking as weapon that mighty bow, furnished by the Upanishads and other non-dual scriptures, fasten to it the arrow of mind, made sharpened by thoughts on reality alone. Then pulling full strength, O student, release and penetrate the mark, that imperishable Brahman. Om peace, peace, peace. Om apyayantu mamangani vak pranaschakshuhu shrotra matra balamindriyani cha sarvani. Sarvam brahma upanishadam maha brahma nirakuryam mama brahma. Nirakaroda nirakaranamastva nirakaranam me astu. Tadatmani nirate ya upanishatsu dharmaste mayi shantu te mayi shantu. Om shanti shanti shanti. May our bodies experience perfect health. May our life force flow unimpeded. May our minds expand in their capacity to know Brahman. For the Upanishads state that all existence is Brahman. Therefore, may we never deny Brahman, and may Brahman never deny us. May there be no rejection of Brahman ever by us, we who are dedicated to the realization of the Atman within. May all the divine qualities cited in the Upanishads also abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavo Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidvishvavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the teachings, or with the world. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. This is the second in our series of classes this weekend at San Francisco, at the SRV Association here. We were broadcasting last weekend from Hawaii, or the weekend before last actually. We finished a series called Essential Teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And next weekend up in Portland we'll be live streaming. All of you who want to tune in will be looking into more of the Adhyatma Upanishad. And these two quotes I just came up with this morning are both about the Upanishads, how when you look into the Upanishads, you as this Upanishad says, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which we're studying in San Francisco, Brahman is hidden in the Upanishads. That's what we read yesterday. So that non-dual Brahman, or that difficult to apprehend presence of divine reality, lies buried there. And so it behooves the aspirant to develop some qualities and some attributes, use some tools, if you will, to strip the coverings off that gift and look into one's own divine nature and be free in this lifetime. So we have been doing that for many years, actually for decades here in SRV, since the 1980s, and some of us have been doing it since our teens, 1960s in my own case, and in the case of our founder, even like Sixon from the 1950s. But there are several of us here in the room that have reached into our spiritual birthday. One of them just had their 13th birthday the other day, I think. And so that means 13 years of spiritual study. We judge our real birth from our spiritual birth, not from our physical birth, because the physical birth is illusory. And into this world of illusions or appearances, always changing, never stable. This is why Jesus said you have to build your house on bedrock, not on sand. So you build it on the bedrock of the spirit, and that's your church, or in our case, your ashram, your divine ashrama. And when you come to that level of realization, it's an endeavor that's beyond just mental and intellectual life. It gets into ethical and moral life, and then it stretches itself even deeper into dharmic life. And the teachings of the Upanishad start to ring truer and truer as you enter these deeper and deeper levels of what we were calling yesterday mental savoring. These great statements, they inspire you at first, and that's a good wake-up call, but then you learn how to take them inside and roll them over and over in your mind. And then you begin to extract some essence out of them. You can't just hear and walk away, but you have to sit with them. And in our case, as I was saying, some of us for years and decades have been sitting with them and extracting the essence out of them. It's actually the quickest path to Brahman. It's the hardest path, but it's the quickest. Hardest path means you're taking a sword and you're cutting right here, cutting off the ignorance of the world. It's the neti-neti path of Vedanta, or it's the shunyata path of emptiness of Buddhism. It's the austere path, but it's a path that is done entirely internally. It all happens in the mind. Because it all came out of the mind, it all has to go back into the mind. So we call that the dissolution of the mind stream. In evolution, and when it gets projected, the mind does all of this, and people even lose track of that. They lose track of the fact that everything out here is just thought made manifest, that everything started with a thought, or as Jesus told John, started with the word. And then it began to trickle down through levels of consciousness and finally reached the realm of the five senses and the five elements. And that's an evolution of a type, you see. But it didn't start just with a big bang on a physical world. It started with a very profound thought or word in a causal world. Causal means what caused everything else since then. So you get a real remake of your ideologies and your concepts and your thinking process when you sit in the presence of the Upanishads and the great rishis and seers like Shvetashvatara, who passed these on to us thousands of years ago and have come down to us over such a long period of time without any interpolation, that is, any undue interpolation, as usually happens with scripture. So we're very fortunate to have scriptures straight from the source that were not tampered with. You know, that may be because India never had just one savior and one book. It had dozens and hundreds of each. And because of that, they were always checking in with each other. Patanjali with Vedavyas, and Vedavyas with Shankara, and Shankara with Chaitanya, and Ramakrishna with Buddha, and this whole line of Indian sages and seers, names that are magnanimous and fantastic to contemplate, even when themselves talk about mental savoring. What to speak about taking up a few slokas of the Gita or the Upanishads to actually begin to envision the Lord in form inside of yourself. Meditate upon the Lord as thine own self, seated in your heart. Probably that one word out of the Upanishads, that one sentence says it all. So it's a grand unification you're heading for, because everything's gotten separated out and everything's become scattered. And even scattered mind, they call it. It's the unhealthy mind, is that fifth level of mind. Or if you're coming from the opposite direction, outside in, then it's the first level of mind. Scattered, then gathered, or gathering, and then finally gathered, and finally focused. You see, that's how people work from outside in. And as you do that, that's giving up evolution, and it's outward turn, you see, and it's beginning to involve. You're going back to the source, and who among us that isn't spiritually sensitive doesn't feel that inside of us? It's just that when we feel that source inside of us, we think it's God or the soul, but it's usually the ego. My teacher Swami Sheshananda made that point. We read that quote yesterday, see, because we were raised in Judeo-Christian upbringing, and quite a lot of dualism and even fundamentalism got through, and the non-duality wasn't emphasized as much as it is in India, in yoga, in Vedanta, in Buddhism, and so forth. That's the emphasis there. See, the I and my Father are one was emphasized, not just a cryptic saying that happened every once in a while from some great seer or an avatar. So you heard that truth, and you began to realize that it was innately present inside of you, and so you started to involve, you started to move back inward. And as you did that, you found out that a lot of the concepts and ideas that you had were based on ego. Your knowledge was based on ego, and your pleasures were based on ego. And so this small self was insinuating itself into everything. Even when things were good, it was coming from the ego. So good and bad, you see, the Atman's beyond that. It's beyond pleasure and pain. It's beyond virtue and vice. So the real soul always laid deeper and deeper inside of you. Probably can't even use the word inside anymore, because then you find out it was all pervasive and everywhere. Outside and inside and beyond. It was with form and beyond both form and formlessness, as Ramakrishna used to say. So when you had that beatific vision, if you will, or satori, or samadhi, or asampragyata, or nirvana, however you would call it in different religious traditions, then you realized that there was a separating process. The wheat from the chaff had to be separated, and you gave up the things of the ego and the world, and you took to God. You must love the Lord thy God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and you had to separate yourself from family and friends even to do that, if you really wanted to walk the path. You couldn't hold them in front of, couldn't hold another ideal, a false ideal, false God. You had to hold those first. You had to hold that one first, rather. So in that introspection that you did, that mental savoring became a real part of everything. It was a way of naturally letting go of the world. Loved God so much that the world just went away. You didn't have to renounce the world, because it went away in your love for God. So that's the long, slow path, you see, the bhakti path. They love the Lord and they enjoy the trip. But for the jnani, it's like, let's get rid of this delusion right away. I'm tired of it. I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to have it as an admixture in my life. I want to have all truth, all essence, all the time. All the Atman, all the time. It's SRV radio. SRV News. So that was a very non-compromising turn the soul took at one point. And as I was saying yesterday, and one of the students came up and said she liked that very much, is that when you first heard the truth, you became a non-dualist right away, and you became enlightened right away, but your mind didn't know it yet. So when we say Jnana Yoga is the swiftest path, we mean one lifetime. That's not all that swift, because you're still going through days and weeks and months of practice and contemplation and learning the art of mental savoring, and then finally getting to a state where you can let go of the ego and experience formlessness for the first time. ironically enough, you were experiencing it every night in deep sleep, but nobody ever came along and told you that you were going into a formless state every night. Gaudapada had to come along and say, well, basically you have 3 or 4 states of your consciousness there, if you want to put it simply: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and what's beyond those 3. So you're bridging form, and then you're having subtle form, and you're having causal form, and you're having formless form, and then you're having formlessness. See? There's even a stage, like we said yesterday, a strata of consciousness that is witness consciousness. And so you're witnessing all phenomena. Sakshi Bhutam, it's called. But when you get to that high state and the world goes away and you're witnessing everything that's happening, there's still a witness present, you see. So there's still 2. There's still a witness and what it's looking at. So that's a very high state of consciousness, but it's not the ultimate state. So that's the razor's edge path you're walking there. And if you want to give up the witness, then you're going to have to achieve some sort of very difficult shift or transition of consciousness into formlessness, and be able to let go of everything, even your fear of death, and even unmanifested prakriti, where the seeds are. You're going to have to let go of the seeds of your own projecting power, you see. So to kind of catch us up with yesterday, we looked at that in these 4 great battles, or great combats. The battle to awaken the unmanifested good within you, the battle to preserve the good already in existence, the battle to keep from waking the evil within, and the battle to repel the evil that's already in existence. These are the 4 noble combats that you're engaged in if you're aspirant, or a seeker of truth, or a devotee of the Lord, or a meditator, or any of the other paths that you're walking. Basically, you can put them into 4, right? Meditation path, action path, jnana path, and devotion path. And one suits the devout person, and one suits the studious person, one suits the active person, and one suits the contemplative person. And then Vivekananda comes along in this recent incarnation and says, why don't you just develop all 4? Let's not leave any room for Maya to creep in anymore. Don't just become one-sided and get good at one path, but why don't you start developing all 4 sides, and there won't be any chance for darkness to get in anymore. See, Godspeed to you in crossing over to the farthest shore beyond all darkness. We chanted that this morning at the end of our meditation down in the shrine room. So that's Ara Eva Ratanabhau Samhatra Yatra Nadjaha, you see. That's Ratanabhau is a chariot wheel, you see. So like the spokes of a chariot wheel that all connect at the center. All the subtle nerve endings connect inside in the heart, they say. So meditate upon the Lord as thyself, seated in your heart, right? And these are all Upanishadic bits of wisdom that you savor inside. You hold them precious and sacrosanct, and the world can't intrude upon them. Nothing in the world can intrude upon them because they're true. See, and the world isn't. The untrue cannot defeat what is true. See, and you can't get to this high realization through Maya. You have to somehow sidestep it, or as Sri Ramakrishna said, back off from it. If you're in a fog bank, you're imagining all sorts of horrors, see, noises and things. But as soon as you get out of the fog bank, you're that witness again, you see. And you see that all of that was false. All the things you imagined were false. So somehow there's no way you can punch the fog bank, or defeat it from inside of it. So you have to withdraw from it and look at it from a distance to see its tricks. So that's resist not evil, isn't it? See, evil's there, it's in, it's all around and so forth, but you can't resist it, because if you resist it, you're admitting to yourself that it's real, but it's not real. It's like darkness in a cave. It's gone as soon as you bring a torch in. Even though it's been there 1,000 years, it'll go away in 2 seconds, you see, or less, if you bring the light in. So you can't ever give in to darkness, that's why original sin is not acceptable to the Vedantist. Well, we believe in original perfection, not original sin. Original sin is untenable, unacceptable to the non-dualist. And along with it, everything that masquerades as the self is unacceptable too. You'll find that only you with a capital Y, or self with a capital S, or Atman, is real, and all else is unreal. First thing you hear in Vedanta, Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya. Brahman is real, the world isn't. But unfortunately, most people start to lament right away. Oh, the world isn't real. It's like they didn't hear those first three words. Brahman is real. They just heard the world is unreal, and they begin to lament. But what about Brahman is real? Don't you know what Brahman is? If you don't, you should find out, because that's the only fulfilling thing. And that's what's in you. That's what's giving everything else its shine. It's what causes the sun to shine. All the suns in the night skies are shining because of that light inside. Om na tatra suryabhati na chandra tarakam nemo vidyutabanti kuto yamagni. There's Surya, and there's Chandra, and there's Agni, you see. That's the light of the sun, the light of the moon, and the light of fire. They all shine by the light of the Atman. And take the Atman away, and everything, you see, is dull and lifeless, void, darkness. So, Brahman is real should cause you to rejoice. It should cause you to stand up and proclaim the truth to the highest heavens. Because the heavens need them too, you see. Heavens are realms. Heavens are not places that you go to stay. You sojourn through them just like you should be sojourning through this world. You want to go beyond heaven and earth and hell. That's why Swamiji says, and it's on one of the charts we'll look at today, where seekest thou? That freedom neither this nor that can give. In books and temples vain thy search. Thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. So he proclaims this great freedom and tells you to give up heavens and earths and hells and hopes and fears and just take to this one reality, and then you'll find out that you are the center of everything. Before you were imagining yourself to be a part of everything, but now you know yourself to be the center of it all, not just a part. You're the entire shooting match, you see. You're not just a spark off the fire. That's qualified non-dualism. You are the fire. So you come closer and closer to that realization, and then when you get it, that's called enlightenment. And you take your place amongst the highest knowers of Brahman. And you'll never abandon that station again. There's nothing that compares to it, so there's no reason to move away from it. You see, it's the non-dual position. So Christ said, I and my Father are one. That came out of the wilderness and said, I am the light of the world. That was it. He had attained it. He could shine then and awaken others. So we looked at that yesterday in these great Upanishadic slokas, the first 5 or 6 of them in chapter 5. And that brings us right away onto the trail of completing chapter 5 today, which we hope to do. And where we ended was the slokas 7 and 8. I'll read them for you. Well, since we say Brahman lies hidden in the Upanishads, let's take the one we finished yesterday and just read it. Brahman lies hidden in the Upanishads, which form the essence of the Vedas. The Vedas are 4 parts, right? First, they started off with the rites and rituals, and they did that for centuries, and then they developed the songs and the hymns that you sing and recite in the pujas and so forth. Then after that, they decided to go to the forest and retreat from the world. That's the forest dweller portion of the Vedas. And then finally, after all of this experience with ritual and song and recitation and memorization and forest dwelling, they wrote the Upanishads. Wrote is a little bit of a mistake there. You see, they came up with the Upanishads and then recited them to their children and to their students, and then they memorized them and passed them on. Finally it got written down somewhere along the way. So these Upanishads came straight from the source by meditating. And that's the ancient rishis of India gave us these, 108, but there were thousands probably. Many of them got lost along the way. Vedavyas came along and happened to get these 108 together, you see, before they became lost to us. And that's why he's called the father of Vedanta, in part, is that he captured some of this for us for this particular time. So anyway, hidden in the Upanishads, which form the essence of the Vedas. Brahman Hiranyagarbha knows as the source. If you remember that, we looked at this chart. We saw Hiranyagarbha, or the cosmic egg. You could also call it the Trinity. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva knows of the highest reality, you see. So it knows of the worlds below it, but it also knows of the reality within it. So Hiranyagarbha is an ancient Sanskrit term. Cosmic egg might be a good way of thinking of it. You could also call it the Word, like Jesus was talking to John. It's the original progenitor. You know, everything came from it. Its seeds are stored there, and then everything comes from it, manifests, and then gets pulled back in. And that's their business. They project, and then they sustain it, and then they withdraw it all the time. So those are the three great forces, you see. Call them Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva if you want, or even sing about them if you want. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvaititam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamashadilaksham Ekam Nicham Bhimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Triguna Rahitam Sadgurum Tanamami. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We sing just one or two of those verses of the Guru Stotram, the salutations to the Guru, to the ultimate Guru. And so basically that's rather emphasizing this teaching that we just had here. You see, Hiranyagarbha knows as the source of himself and the source of the Vedas. So Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva know that Brahman is the source of everything. The rest of us don't necessarily. Or we forget, or we fall away from knowledge of these great beings. But we should be singing to them. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara. So Brahma and Vishnu are mentioned there, but who's Devo Maheshwara? Shiva. Yeah, it's a great god, Devo Maheshwara. The great Mahesh, the great Lord. So these are, if you want to look at it anthropomorphically in deities, then you see them as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. If you want to look at them as powers or forces, then they're this great trinity, see, that's constantly keeping these cycles going eternally. That's their business. They live for hundreds and thousands of cycles of time, cycles themselves which are 4,320,000,000 years long, you see. So time is nothing to them. One of those long cycles is a day of Lord Brahma's life, and another long cycle is a night of his life. See? Just like you could go to sleep tonight and sleep for 1,000 years and wake up and a second would have gone by, you see. So time is nothing. It's a good thing to think about when you think of this lifetime. Say, well, I only have a few years now to realize God in the body. See? So then time will be well used, you see. You won't go wasting it. See, focus on the ultimate enlightenment, ultimate attainment of enlightenment, and then enlightenment of all beings. So a little bit of a suggestion of what we looked at yesterday, of Trinity, what's beyond it. So Hiranyagarbha is the mention there, the cosmic egg. And it says further, those gods and seers who realized in the former days became identified with it and verily became immortal. And that's why then we ended up looking at the former days and the future days, how we would paint a palette of future lives for ourselves. That we should get on the stick here and realize that we've lived many lifetimes before and we will live many in the future unless we decide otherwise. No God is going to make you live other lives. No devil is going to keep you pinned into the cyclic process. It's all your own doing. It's the law of karma that's the God here. And so it's inscrutable, so we have to be very careful when we follow it. And be about neutralizing karma and attenuating it where possible. And being free, wipe that slate clean before the end of our life. And that's why I said yesterday you meditate every day, because you wipe clean the residue of the day, you see. And at night you sleep, more residue comes from your past lifetimes, called prarabdha karma. And you want to wipe that clean by meditating the next morning, you see. So you live in a neutral state like that all the time. It's quite an art, and it's a little bit different than attainment. Holy Mother said, you can't see your spiritual attainment. Nobody can see that, and it's vanity to try and think so, to try and measure your spiritual attainment. It all happens unseen. It's not like what happens out here where you can actually see the results come back from what you do. This is all very subtle stuff that's going on very deep inside of you, and it's hopefully operating in the realm of karmas that are getting neutralized, and you don't even know they're getting neutralized. All you do is do the practice. Keep yourself free from bondages and knots, and keep yourself from creating more karma for yourself day by day. So you keep in a very neutral state. It's the middle path. Buddha was famous for it. Holy Mother was famous for it. Sri Krishna talks about it. The middle way is usually the way for most householders, and some monks even. So in that way, put a capper on that. In former days, became identified with Brahman and became immortal. That's you. You're the God of your own lifetime, you see. You're the God inside your own body. That's you. That's your Atman. That's your true self, not your ego. So you should claim the lands that are yours, and claim the inheritance, and stand up and be counted amongst the foremost knowers of Brahman in this very lifetime. What a novel idea. Let's go on so we don't spend too much time on review. So there's the new sloka, number 7. Only that one who gets attached to pleasurable qualities of things does work for the sake of its fruits, and enjoys the fruits of his own deeds. Though really the master of the senses, he becomes bound by them. And assuming various forms, wanders about through the 3 paths as a result of his own deeds. 3 paths are like the gross world, subtle world, causal world, and there's 3 nadis that even come up the spine, you see. If you wander around any one of these, then you get lost. But if you see them all together, then you become a knower of the 3 states. You know your waking state, you know your dreaming state, and you know your deep sleep state. And you become a knower of Brahman, and you're never lost again. You don't get lost at the time of death and wander off and then get born in some womb somewhere in some world without knowing who you are. You'll always remember who you are. And that's one of the great efficacies of the Dharma, is to, while you're living in this body, inform you as to what's going on. See, because most people don't know what's going on. Very highly intellectual people have no idea what's going on. They have no idea about the spiritual truths in the Dharma, and they don't care about it. They wouldn't seek it even if you put it in front of them with a ribbon on it. So this is good for you. Christ couldn't convince them, you see. So, that's the wheat and the chaff, you see. The discrimination process, it's the division between the divine and the demoniacal. What's the monstrosities of the world, which you want no part of, And then this wonderful difference between God and mammon. If you take to yourself what is the Lord's and you give to Caesar the rest. See? So no matter what age you look at it or hear it from, and what religion you hear it from, Christianity, Judaism, Vedanta, it pretty much amounts to the same thing when you look at it in a cogent way, see, informed by the scriptures. So only that one who gets attached to pleasurable quality of things does work for the sake of its fruits. So that's a problem. It's called the ego being in charge of things. Oh, I like this pleasure, so I'm going to do this work, so I get this fruit, and then I'm going to enjoy this fruit. But that fruit turns sour after a while, you see. Krishna says that in the Gita. What you want is not what's pleasurable in the beginning, because that turns painful later. What you want is what's painful in the beginning, because that turns blissful later. See? So, as I was saying yesterday, when you savor things, you want to savor dark things too. Death. You want to savor death. See, the only way that you can master death is to love it. Love it to death. See? You must embrace it. You must embrace all your negativities. See, if you, St. Thomas started the church down in India. See, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, then what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Heard Jesus say that, you see. So this is these battles, you see. You have to bring that out. And it doesn't just mean bring out the good and then live in some sort of fairy world, you see. You have to bring out what's negative inside of you too, because that's going, if you don't bring that out, it'll hide back there and destroy you. You have to bring it out and expose it to the light. Exposing it to the light means exposing it to this, and to this, see, and to this. Guru, scriptures, and meditation. That's an unbeatable combination. You expose yourself to those three great sources, they're called the three great sources, then you'll annul the karmas of your lifetime, and as you're doing it, you'll annul the karmas of the past lifetime, and you won't create any karma for your future lifetime anymore. You'll have a choice, you see, of whether or not you want to come back to life. You'll choose your parents. You'll choose your spiritual practice. You'll choose what you want to do in life. You'll choose your gender, what kind of physical body you have. You choose the country you're born into, and you'll attain Jivan Mukti and be free. Every lifetime will be that way, until you don't want to take lifetimes anymore. Videha Mukti, you'll say, I don't want to take a body anymore, I'm going to stay in formlessness, you see, in bliss of formlessness. It's not the bliss of a void or some sort of superficial bliss or some vacancy in your mind. It's the bliss of knowing yourself to be one with the ocean of light. That wandering sunbeam, you see, joined up with the ocean of light, or that hailstone fell into the ocean. And that's not any small measure of bliss. That's all bliss. You see, Ananda, it's all bliss. There's no other word in the world for it, but in Sanskrit, Ananda. It's all bliss, and it's uninterrupted, and it's unalloyed. There's no mixture to it, and it doesn't cease. See? And you can live in that bliss, and the idea is that you should be living in it. Going on, subtle as the point of a goad and pure, effulgent, and infinite like the sun, Brahman alone is seen assuming as another the size of a thumb near the heart, on account of the finiteness of the heart in which it appears, and associating itself with the ego and with sankalpa on account of the limitations of the intellect. So this one immeasurable and unconditioned Brahman gets conditioned by associating with the ego, with the intellect, and with sankalpa, projection, you see, the projecting power. And that's why these great powers are in order, you see, to project, to preserve, and to destroy. Those are going on despite us. And our business is to, if we find ourselves caught in those processes, is to see through them and transcend them, and be the witness of them. And that's why I put up this chart here, which is good to look at in terms of this sloka. This is actually sloka 9 and, sloka 8, 7 and 8. So I wanted to show you how India looks at this. That is, what is Brahman? And how does it appear to us? So, see, I've put it here in 4 different ways. How the Vedanta puts it, how the Gita puts it, how Tantra puts it, and how Yoga puts it. These are 4 of the great pathways of India. Call them darshanas if you want, or ways of seeing, ways of clear seeing. So across the top they're measured. You see, Vedanta, Brahman is ultimate reality, nameless, formless, timeless, deathless, beyond anything cause and effect wise, as the earlier slokas just told us. It stands superior to anything that takes on the form of a cause, it said earlier. Yesterday we took that sloka. Now, so they call it Brahman. In Gita it would be called Adhyatma, the imperishable. In Tantra they call it Brahmabhava, perception of reality. And in Yoga they call it Atikranta Bhavaniya, perfection. Now, that's the ultimate level of this great consciousness. Now, when it appears in the form, the first thing it appears as would be the Supreme Godhead. They call that Ishwara. That's formless form, really. There's a static part of Ishvara and a kinetic part of Ishvara. So when you see the subtlest part of Ishvara, you don't really see it, you feel it. It's a formless form. And but yet it's not Brahman yet, because you can't feel Brahman. See what I mean? There's no feeler and feelee when you find Brahman. You're it. You see, it's like the game of cosmic tag. Everything is ended. You're it. Oh, I'm that. You see, that's the great mantra, right? I am that, or that thou art. So you can't have any two-ness there. No suggestion of two-ness can be allowed in there, you see. So when the very, very subtle sense of two-ness comes, that's when you'll see God as Ishvara, the chosen ideal, the chosen one. And every religion has its form of Ishvara. Buddha for the Buddhists, Jesus for Christians, and so forth. So whether they call it a prophet, or whether they call it a seer, whether they call it an avatar, they all differ a little bit. But basically that's this formless form that everyone can sense. That you can pray to, but you cannot pray to Brahman. You can't look up and find it either, you see, because you have to look in to find it. So if you're praying upward, there's some entity out there in space, you're misguided, you're misdirected. The only thing up there is probably only 3 of the 5 elements. See? What are you praying to them for? You got all 5 down here. Might as well pray to the Earth Mother if you're going to pray to something outside of you. But actually the best place to pray is inside of you. You see, that's where this dwells. So they call that in the Vedanta Supreme Godhead. In the Gita, God Adiyagya, God assuming form for the sake of sacrifice. It comes into the world to sacrifice for others. Dhyana Bhava in Tantra, focus on the deity. Dhyan, you know that word means?
Meditation.
Meditation. It's the 7th limb of yoga, dhyan. So the bliss or the mood of meditation is focus in a blissful way upon this deity, see, which meditate upon the Lord as thine own self seated in your heart. That would be that deity, you see. And in yoga sadhana they would call it pragya jyoti, the masterful. This is the masterful soul. This is the great master. We often use that term and assign it to Sri Ramakrishna because of his appearance here in the recent times. He's, it's been 160 years since his birth now, is it? 180 years since his birth. He was like 1836 to 1886. So just in a short 180 years, less than 200 years, 5 million people have flocked to him, see, and more are coming all the time. He even said, those who meditate upon this form, pointing to himself, he called this form a pillowcase. See, this is just a pillowcase. So what's in it is the real Ramakrishna. Those who meditate on this form within 200 years will find a way under the curtain of Maya before it falls again. So when the avatar comes, he lifts the curtain of Maya like Atlas, kind of thing. And people can get into the light, you see, get out of rebirth and death and that whole cycle and suffering and everything, and get into the light. So hurry up, folks. what is it, 20 more years before that curtain might come slamming down, and doesn't it look like it to you when you look out there? So there's this opportunity to have deep communion with Ishvara, God with form, and it's your own self manifesting there for you to save yourself. You can't think of it as anything other than your own self, because it's inside of yourself. Last night we sang beautifully. In fact, it reminds me of that. Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karunamaya Jaya Kripa Nidana. 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 That's the Chalisa, Ramakrishna Chalisa, hardly known in the world. I was gifted it to me by a Swami in Chandigarh, India some years ago, and written by a man, a doctor, a Vedantist, a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, who's still alive today, I believe. So we're beginning to sing it around. You see, it's the Ramakrishna Chalisa. But one of the great verses, which reminded me of it just now, was that, speaking about Sri Ramakrishna, it sings, gods and goddesses revealed themselves to him in multitudes. So you're talking about this level, you see, this inner level where these deities reside. They're inside of you, not just as mental concepts, purely and strictly, but as beings in their own right, in their own realms. I mean, Christ knew this. The kingdoms of heaven are within you. My Father's mansion has many chambers. He meditated in Gethsemane and he saw these things. That was before Christianity existed. You see, so these great seers see these great beings. The Buddhists call it the Buddha fields, right? There's so many Buddhas. You see them in the Tankas, right? So they've had these inner visions of these places inside of themselves. They're not outside of the self. You'll find the planets outside of yourself, with nothing there probably. But inside is peopled, just like this world is peopled by 7 billion people. There are billions of souls in there, ancestors, celestials, angels, gods and goddesses. So gods and goddesses revealed themselves to him in multitudes when he meditated. So he was at that level of consciousness where they reside. And you too can have what we call darshan with them if you meditate on them. But best to choose one, you see. One great being and meditate on it. That's called Ishtam. This comes from that same root, Ishwara. And meditate upon the Ishtam for a while. While means 30, 40, 50 years, a lifetime too. You see. What is time? You see, what is time? Let it pass. Because if you meditate on it, you'll be in the bliss of meditation. You won't know this passage of time. All of a sudden you wake up and say, hey, I had my 13th birthday spiritually yesterday, you see. And here I am just passing my days in bliss, mentally savoring my Ishtam every day, and the teachings that have come from that Ishtam, whether it be he or she, or it, he, she, it. Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, or Brahman, in our case. So, Pragjyoti, the masterful one, the great master. Now if you come down another step, and this is the 4 ways to perceive God. You see, it's at 4 different levels. We were talking yesterday about Saguna Brahman, how God also has attributes. It has no attributes, and that's the highest, but it manifests itself with attributes through forms. And that's going to be helpful for you. It's rather also a tantric type of view, that God has taken on forms. The non-dualists will go, no form. God doesn't take on a form. So they'll prefer that, and they'll stay at that station. It's formless. Well, yes, that's ultimately true. But people are down here in form, and many of them can't just jump to the formless state like that. Presto changeo, I'm enlightened, you see. They're going to have to move by stages. And these stages are within you. So you take a step, and you take a step, and you take a step. So one step you could take is to see the immortal self within you, Antaryami, the inner ruler controller seated in the heart. That's like a pat statement of Vedanta. when they say antaryami, that's their pat definition. Inner ruler immortal seated in the heart. You see, so Gita would call that the Adi Daiva, or the Purusha, the original Adi divinity, Daiva. See, the original divinity. Tantra would call that mantra and hymns. You get it through mantra and hymns. See, the mantra suggests those words to you, and then you sing these hymns. Like didn't everyone perk up when I just sang the Guru Stotram? See, oh good, he stopped talking, he started singing. Oh, now I'm happy with it. So, are you going to deny that mantra and hymns have a profound spiritual effect on you? So, that's how Tantra would see that level. And then in Yoga Sadhana, Ritambara Pragya, intuitive wisdom. Now, Rita is the oldest word in any language for truth. Lovely Rita, as sometimes they say. She's not just a meter maid. She's the ultimate truth walking around. Or maybe she's manifesting as a meter maid, or hundreds of thousands of meter maids. But she's that lovely Rita that we mentally savor inside. You see, Divine Mother. Divine Mother meter maid, you see. And so that's for intuitive wisdom. Now if you take these levels of consciousness to the very, let's not say low, but let's say gross, you see, or maybe better, fundamental level, then you have the symbol. Brahman also appears as the universal symbol. See? And so that means basically objects. All objects are pointing to the existence of God. And so that's how you should look at them. They're actually manifestations of your mind. They started out as a thought in your mind, and then they turned into an object. See, we thought microphone, and then it became possible for a microphone to appear here on this earth. It had to start as a thought. In the beginning was the Word. There's an ancient wisdom, you see. So anything then is a pointer to Brahman, or let's put it even better, everything is a direct sign that Brahman exists. All you have to do is look into the content of the object. Now, if you look into the physical content of the object, you'll find that it's subatomic particles changing at a billionth of a second. So too swift for the mind to even comprehend. So you have to conclude in the end, and science hasn't quite got that far yet, that objects are empty. The Buddhists would come forth and say, yes, that's shunyata, that's emptiness in everything, you see. But behind this emptiness there's a fullness, you see, but it's just not a form. So that's why if you know all these levels of the manifestation of Brahman, that you won't ever get caught in the void, you see, or get caught in the lurch. See? Up a creek without a paddle. You'll always be able to default or go back to an underlying substratum. So how Patanjali, the father of yoga, would put it, underlying substratum of everything, you see. Or that there's a sutradhara, there's a thread running through the pearls, as Krishna puts it, you see. The pearls are fine, we like that. You see the worlds, the people, they're all beautiful. We like to put them on, enjoy them, sell them, buy them. But without the thread running through them, they'd be worthless, as it were, you see. They wouldn't have that beauty. So that underlying substratum, or that thread, is what's running through it all. And you would take note of that if you were the consummate enjoyer, you see, the great enjoyer of all of this, the great savorer, you see. So that's a very important thing. Vivekananda call that pratika or pratima. You take a stone obelisk and meditate on it, or a candle in a windless place. Yato diva nivatastu ningati sopama shmrita, as Krishna says in the Gita. Or a little statue of baby Ram or something. You meditate upon that, because that's a manifestation of Brahman. You see, that's a direct link. And it'll cause your mind to forget everything else. You'll focus on that little thing. And then that little thing will suggest itself in your dreams or in your meditations. And you'll see that if it's true in one state, it's true in another state. And then you'll see how it transforms in each state, from gross to subtle to causal. From causal, the thread will lead you into Brahman, formless, that everything came out of Brahman. It's what we just read here, you see. So, if you looked at the Gita's way of putting that, Adibhuta, you see, Adhyatma, Adhyagya, Adidaiva, Adibhuta. This is the question Arjuna asks Krishna in the chapter of the Gita. He says, what is Adidaiva? What is Adhyatma? What is Adibhuta? What is Adhyagya? So Krishna answers, and Adibhuta is perishable nature. So that means earth, air, fire, water, and ether formed into objects that are constantly changing. So that's how Bhagavad Gita would cause you to look upon the original nature. You see, the thing is, you have to know that there's an unmanifested part of it. The bulk of the iceberg is unmanifested. There's so much nature ready to come into manifestation. So many souls, bodies, ready to come out of their inner state, like ancestors to humans, you see, angels to ancestors. There's so much of that ready to happen, and it's all happening with forms, and Brahman is formless, right? Don't transgress the law. So if these forms are coming in and out of being, they're a part of nature. But the nature you don't see is unmanifested, and that proves to you that there are subtle worlds inside. All these things have to come from somewhere, you see. Nothing doesn't exist. A physicist friend of mine who's a Vedantist has that on his t-shirt. Nothing doesn't exist. There's no such thing as nothing. There's just everything all the time. It's just a matter of whether it's manifested or it's not, you see. Whether it shows itself to you or it's hiding, you see. And your business is to bring out what is hidden, right? And manifest it so that you can see it. And you bring it out whether it's good or bad or mixed so that you can see it. Because if the devils are looking in you, then you have to bring it out and say, "Ha, I spy you," you see. And you shine the light on it and it goes away and you're free, you see. So, perishable nature. Tantra would call that fourth level Bhuya Baba. Bhuya. The practice of rituals. So there's where you get into the rites and rituals and various things. Those can be a great trap. So you have to be careful of them. But they can also be, if you're done in the right way, they can also be this doorway into finer reality. Like the puja we did last night, offering flowers to the image and so forth. I mean, we look at the altar there and we go, you see, like this, right? So you take the mudra, which is, by the way, one of these universal symbols. Take the mudra and you point it at the altar, and then you point it at yourself and you say the mantra, you see, Pitabhyo Namaha, so forth. And so he said, what is there is also here. See, when Sri Ramakrishna had his, sometimes he went into samadhi with these kinds of things. He says, what is there is also here. That is, what is heavenward is also here inside of you. So that would be using rites and rituals in the best possible way to make this transition to your next state of consciousness. Like I say, you do this every night anyway, so you might as well do it consciously. See, go into dream, go into deep sleep, come back out. For all the days of your life, you've been switching levels of consciousness, and yet now you're coming forth and telling me you don't believe in consciousness, or you don't believe that it has levels. Well, your very actions every 24 hours are disproving that, I'm sorry. So you have to then take stock of the movements of consciousness until such a time when you know that consciousness does not move ever. It just appears to. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that. The snake sometimes sits on the ground, not moving. And other times it wriggles across the floor, you see, across the ground. So when it wriggles, it's Shakti power, and when it's still, it's Brahman. So everything has this static part to it, and it has this dynamic part to it. That's called Shiva and Shakti in Tantra, see. So you take stock of that, you see. And it's also a good indicator. If it moves, it's not Brahman, see. If it has a form, not Brahman, see. It's not real, not reality. And therefore you can use it as a measure. But you can also use it as a doorway. You don't want to end up like some of the Mayavadins, you say, everything is illusion, and throw the whole baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. That never worked very well. India's India gave birth to a lot of these Mayavadan theories and practices, but they always championed or preferred the fullness of everything. Brahman is in everything, and that's why this is being given right now in accordance with this 7th sloka of the 5th chapter of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, to show you how they think about reality on all levels. See? You don't see any denial going on here. You see just affirmation. See? That everything is Brahman, and that's the ultimate realization in Vedanta. All is Brahman. See? Sarvam kalvidam Brahma. So then you have to prove it to yourself. Yes, this is Brahman, but it's Brahman with form. So it's not the ultimate Brahman. By saying the world is also Brahman, you're not denying that Brahman is formless, nor vice versa, you see. By saying Brahman is the only thing that exists, you're not denying the world. Unless you're attached to it, then you should probably deny it. But, you can say that, oh, that's a manifestation of Brahman. It's an expression of Brahman. It's a reflection of Brahman. If you really want to get hard on it, then it's an illusion. See? It's like a mirage in a desert. See? It doesn't really have any abiding reality. And you can take it apart like that, but then put it back together. Now, finally, yoga sadhana, pratama kalpika, beginning aspirants are a sign of God in the world. See, that would be the level of this 4th level of ways of perceiving God in yoga, would be there are these beginning aspirants that are waking up to intuitive wisdom. See, and they'll eventually become masters, and they'll realize their innate perfection. So you put this all together, you see. And so in 4 different darshanas, as it were, of India, you see these 4 different ways of perceiving God on 4 levels. A good teaching. Now, before we leave this chart and move on, stages of realization are interesting to look at. There's the mental plane, early phenomena, and then there's the ethical plane, dharmic law. There's the cosmic plane, that's what I said, kinetic Ishwara, where it has a form. Then there's transcendental plane, sattvic Ishvara, that becomes formless, but is still present to your consciousness. You can detect it. And then there's the absolute plane of formless reality. So there's a way of putting it in stages of realization from lower to higher. Now you have to realize that the seers start here, and then they come down. They start here, and then they come down. Down means out. And we don't want to give the impression again that, we have to look up to see reality and look down to see the devil. It's out and in, basically. Evolution and involution are true to a point. But that's a duality. So Swami Vivekananda used to say, this coming and going is all mere nonsense. Where's the time when Brahman will come, when all time is in Brahman? And where's the space where Brahman will come to when all space is in Brahman? You see, it's all happening inside of you, and then stopping inside of you. You see, it's born, plays, sort of like a wave rising, having a little wave life, and then giving up its wave form and going back into the ocean. And millions of them are happening all the time. That's the whole Mayic sleight of hand. That this appearance is being foisted on people so much that they just get overwhelmed and they finally just give up their quest, you see. They give in to multiplicity, to diversity, to varieties. And notice how people are into varieties. They have to have so many varieties of everything. The monks narrow that down. I think I'll just eat this one bit of food today and do this, and that's it. See? I think I'll just take this one sloka or this one book and read it for a month. See, everything else goes by the wayside, you see. Focus. The Jains and the Jain religion, they don't want to cause even an insect harm, right? So I don't think I'll move out of my house today, or I might just go around the yard, but I'm not going to go to the next village, even if there's money to be made, you see, in a legitimate way. I'll just stay right here because I'll just keep my karma so clear and pure. I won't create any new karma, and I'll be content and happy right where I am. That's a very beautiful way to live. So, you might say there's the risk of moving about, you see, and bumping into not only your own karma, but the karma of the collective mind is out there too. Boiling over like a toilet that got clogged up, you see. And it's running everywhere in streams. See, look out. Run for your life. So this kind of economy is very much a part of spirituality, true spirituality. They're slimming it all down. So I wanted to show you that, and let's look then at this sloka. Subtle as the point of a goad, and pure, effulgent and infinite like the sun, Brahman is seen assuming another as the size of a thumb on account of the finiteness of the heart. So they say Brahman is like there, just to the left of the breastbone, a few centimeters, the size of a thumb. And actually, if you look at the anatomical heart, there's a chamber, empty chamber in the heart that nobody knows what it's for. That's actually there physically too, as if to suggest that, yes, there is something subtle. You just have to go beyond the anatomical, beyond the physical, and you'll find a subtle chamber. And it's very much in line with these chakras they talk about. I'll be teaching that in Seattle, weekend after next, at a retreat there. These chakras are not in the physical spine. The physical spine is sort of a representation of them. But they're in the next level of consciousness. And then they form vortexes of energy, you see, that are baser and finer and finally perfect, very refined. And so those are suggested by the spine. So anything you look at physically, isn't it, here as a symbol, it just speaks of what's inside of you. Everything does that. Ramakrishna was a master at seeing that. Everywhere he went and everything he saw was just a manifestation of spirit, and he put it into stories and teachings. Buddha did that too in the Dhammapada. They're masters at that, and they help you understand it on that level. Now, it says further, associating it himself, or Brahman, associating itself with the ego and sankalpa on account of the limitations of the intellect. So, how everything gets dumbed down, if you want. How consciousness apparently gets limited, and then how it delimits itself. That's a great art for the spiritual aspirant. So, now I'm on this plane, then I went into deep sleep, and then I went into dreaming. I had a vision, and I had a stupid dream. Wherever I am, I have to identify what level I'm at, you see, and be able to pinpoint that at any given time, so that you're not caught off guard. You know that consciousness is shifting. And as I just said, that's all nonsense. Really, consciousness is just one place at all time, and it doesn't move. But you haven't realized that all-pervasive, immovable consciousness yet. You're looking for it. The Upanishads are famous for that. One sloka earlier in this Upanishad, in I think first or second chapter, is they look for that Atman like they would look for oil in a sesame seed, or how they would look for patina in a penny, in copper, or how they would look for fire in a fire stick. It's hidden. You would never think that there was patina in a penny, but put it on the shower for a little while, you see. After a few days, you'll see this green coming out of it. So just like that, this Atman is in everything. This consciousness is underlying everything. But you're going to have to do certain processes called sadhana to bring it out from hiding. See, it's Maya, a sleight of hand that's hidden this. It's conditioning. It's overlays. It's false superimposition. It's upadis. It's koshas. It's form that is hidden this. And all form comes from nature. So you're going to want to get beyond nature. Not a popular thought for those who love nature, but this is how India sees it. The great seers have been those who have gone beyond nature. And those beings who have never gotten enlightened are those that are attached to nature. It's just a fact. So you have to give up your kind of New Age thinking and tendencies around that and have an experience of formlessness. And then you'll be able to tell people with great authority, this patina does exist in copper. I'll prove it to you. There is oil in sesame seeds. We're just going to have to invent a press, gather a lot of seeds, and spend a few years pressing it, you see. Then you'll see I was right, you see. So this is sort of like Jesus or Buddha, 2,000 years later, trying to prove what they say to people who are still stuck. They're still stuck on it. Need a good teacher, a good scripture, and some meditation, some practice, you see. And that'll bring it all forward. So that further says here, it identifies itself with the ego and with sankalpa. So let's move on to finish that shloka by showing you this chart on sankalpa. That's not it either. Where'd it go? Somewhere here it is. Now, a lot of writing there, but don't worry, I'll make it easy and quick for you to run through this. This is a teaching by Lord Vashishta, and the problem that Krishna talks about to Arjuna, he says, you must beware of sankalpa, Arjuna. Sankalpa is a positive evil. Sankalpa is just mental projection. So the evil in it is that it covers formless Brahman. When you're born into a body, you've projected that body. You've planned for it probably before you died in the last lifetime. You planned for your next body already. If you hadn't planned very well, then you're going to have a random selection of parents, and you're going to come out in some country and in some form with some certain karmas and so forth, and you don't know yourself, you see. But there are souls who plan very definitely their next birth. They have this art down. Say there's one picture on the wall right there, Dalai Lama, right? Planned his lifetime 14 times or so. So there are souls even among us today that are doing this. It's an art. It's a spiritual art, and they're conscious of the process, and so they're masters of the inner planes. They'd have to know the kingdoms of heaven within, and they'd have to know all of these levels to be able to move through them without getting caught. You see, it's very easy to get caught in unmanifested prakriti, or in the realm of the celestials, or the realm of the gods and goddesses. Ramakrishna said when he went deep in his meditations, he encountered the realm of the gods and goddesses, and they all wanted him to come into their realm and worship them. See, we'll make everything so blissful for you. You just come here and worship us, you see. So you pass through the realms of the lokas, they're called, and the deities, and they're very, very beautiful. That's why they're called devas and devis. That means the shining ones. They shine with the light. You see manifestations of them out here in charismatic teachers. And these teachers, most of them, are not very good for you. See, they're trying to do things for you when they should be teaching you how to do things for yourself, you see. To become a master yourself, not to follow them. So you follow good teachers for a while, and then those teachers are there to free you. See, and then you go and you do the same for others. That's the idea in Vedanta and Buddhism and so forth, is that, yes, you must become a great devotee and a follower, and you must have an ishtam, and you probably find a good one, and you're, like me and my teacher, I'll be eternally grateful for him, you see. And but now he set me free to share this with others, you see. He shared it with me, I have to share it with others. So if I have the wherewithal to do that, I will do that all my life, till the voice won't work anymore, you see. So, and it'll be a good day too, when I shut up. I know it. And I'll just go inside and I'll savor all of this that I've been sharing with you. I'm savoring it as I say it, you see. I want you to do the same. So, but, let's put it in context here. All of it is sankalpa. Everything is projection in the realm of form. So everyone's doing it. Even the gods and goddesses, even the avatars, are engaged in projection, sankalpa. So Krishna is calling this a positive evil. Can you turn off that switch that causes the mind to create worlds? Can you give up nature and not get into form anymore, is what they're saying. And it's really very particular to India. You don't find any of the other religions, not very often anyway, talking about rebirth being a negative thing. Many of them just don't talk about rebirth. But when they do, it's a good thing. See, I have many bodies again. But in India, say, no, this is not right. You must give up the rebirth process. You must get off the wheel, the Kala Chakra. You must be free and know what formlessness exists. Know that you are formless in essence, you see. And you'll never do that when you're attached to nature and form. You'll be going around in these cycles, and it's so easy to get lost on them. Like a kid in a merry-go-round after eating popcorn and peanuts. See, I think I want to get off, you see. So, getting off the cycle is this freedom, it's this heady freedom, it's this profound sense of well-being, you see, of supremacy, and being described by these very slokas here that we're reading. So when consciousness identifies itself with the ego and begins the sankalpa process, then Vashishta comes along and says, yes, there are beings who are doing sankalpa mayically, and then there are beings who are doing sankalpa in lila. These are sporting. See? They're playing. They're not taking it seriously. They take the truth seriously. They take the Lord seriously. They take the Mother seriously. They take the Dharma seriously. But as they live, it's like Krishna says in the Gita, they put on forms and let go of forms just like kids outgrow clothes and put on new sets of clothes, you see. They never get attached to anything. But the Maya Sankalpa people are extremely attached to every little thing. Before Holy Mother passed away, she was looking at some of the minions there in Calcutta, and she said she realized that some people are so attached to everything. She mentioned one particular person she saw that was extremely attached to an old, corroded, dented tin pot. And it was like, couldn't let it go, you see. Or like the Avadhut walking, found this mother monkey dragging this 2-week-old dead corpse of its young along and couldn't let it go, right? Completely in grief and attachment that its offspring had died. You see, it was just dragging it around for 2 weeks, stinking and smelling. You see. So there's this kind of inordinate attachment that attends upon the human mind that falls that far away from knowledge of freedom. See, knowledge that freedom is its own true nature. Just the thought is ennobling, right? Causes you to want to stand up, and breathe. See, breathe, everyone, breathe. So quickly, in the remaining 5 or 10 minutes of this half, let's go down this side of the chart. Now, basically you see here the quote, "The universes are only modes of consciousness reflected through Atmic Sankalpa, the divine will of Parabrahma, which is said to evolve them out of itself for the purpose of sportive play." It's rather a tantric idea, Lila. Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta particularly, I don't know if the Lord wants to sport. It doesn't make sense to me. Why would the Lord want to sport when the Lord has everything in itself? It's perfect blissfulness and perfection itself, so why would it want to come out and sport in a form? I say, why ask why? See, it just does. So let's look at it. See, so when God gets into a sport, remember we're taking this off of this sloka, right, that says it associates itself with the ego and with sankalpa on account of the limitations of the intellect. So why does it limit itself, and how does it delimit itself and get free? So when it gets into that, it does it for the sportive play of it. Let's just accept it as the premise right now. And we'll talk to Gaudapada later about whether it's true or not. So Parabrahma, absolute reality, is there. That's what's mentioned. Now, the soul can go either way. See, it can start engaging in Atmic Sankalpa. See, but Ramakrishna says, one lifetime, it just gets embroiled in action. It creates karma, and from there, it's gone. You see, it can't get rid of its karma. In fact, the Buddhists say 3 lifetimes usually get rid of your karma when you've developed it. 1 to recognize it, which most people aren't doing, and 1 lifetime to get rid of it by practice, commitment, and then 1 lifetime to be free. You have to live a free lifetime to be a bodhisattva, you see, to be a free ajivan mukta. You have to have that 1 lifetime where you live free. So those 3 lifetimes are what's in store for people who would fall away from the Atmic Sankalpic process. If other souls come in, take 1 look at the world, say, oh, how beautiful, but it's so unreal, I'm going to give it up now. And they leave, you see. Just 1 glimpse of it is all they need to see through it. But other souls are not that clear, you see, they're not that strong. Maybe they have karma that Just drawing them back into form. For pleasure. Didn't we just read that? Right? Wasn't it? We just read it. Only he who gets attached to pleasurable qualities of things does work for the sake of its fruits and enjoys his deeds. You see, so enjoyment, pleasure, is a great trap. Pain is much better teacher than pleasure is. If you had pain, then it would maybe cause you to look around and do something about your situation. But pleasure can just lull you to sleep for lifetimes. So with that as a sort of given then, let's look at how Maya Sankalpa develops quickly. The power of obscuration is a good English phrase to describe Maya. Or you could call it Avarana Shakti, Shankara says. It's the covering power. And then Vikshepa Shakti distorts. So Maya works in two ways. Three ways really, but two ways as far as the negative goes. It covers the truth, and then it distorts it and makes it look like something else. Fun, huh? You have to be a Sherlock Holmes of the Sankalpic world, you see, to see through this. To look at objects and see them as Brahman. Because nobody's doing that. They're looking at objects for pleasure. And that's binding them, see. And that's ignoble. They get bound by an object, like a tin pot or something, you see. But this is different. You're looking at it as a symbol of Brahman. You see it, so you can just move through it. See. So, power of obscuration. There's a third power of Maya. It's called Prakasha Shakti. It means the power of revelation. So, in that same Maya, the poison in the snake, there's the power of deception and there's the power of covering. But there's also the power of revelation in Maya. And that's where you would get a hold of a teaching like that. Maya itself could help free you. Sri Ramakrishna said, Maya is like the skin of a mango. See, a green mango. It protects the fruit while it's unripe. But when it gets ripe, you take the skin off and throw it away. You don't eat it, right? So Maya is that green skin and everything that keeps it protected until it's ripe. But once it's ripe, if you cling to that skin, then you never get to eat the ripe fruit. So he described Maya in that. Sometimes he said Maya is like she who holds her hand over your eyes and with the other hand leads you on. So you have to go blind wherever she wants. See. So Maya is not an all negative thing, and it's not something out to get you like an incarnate devil or something. It's the power of obscuration and the power of distortion. It's not sentient, but it's there in everything as the covering power, like green scum over a lake. So you move that and see a reflection and it comes dancing back. So that's just the nature of it. You have to then beware of it. That song of George Harrison, Beware of Maya, one of the Beatles, right? So you have to be careful to clear that, you see. All right, so then see the person enjoying, apparently so, Maya Sankalpa falls into the appearance of time and space and causality, mind, intellect, all as assumed reality. They think these things are real. Even though if you go to sleep, time disappears. Even though if you go into meditation, time disappears. Even though if you die, time disappears. Somehow they still think that time is real, a real entity, like scientists. Or parents raising their children. Oh, you're this tall now, you're this tall now, you're this tall now. It never tells them that the Atman never grows or shrinks. And that's your true nature. You're not changing. Anything that changes is Brahman. You don't transform. Brahman doesn't go through transformations. Only Maya does. So it falls into that misconception. Then Mayakasha visits the universes as ego-based ideation. All the worlds become there for the ego to enjoy. Then falls lower, deluded contemplation of the things of the world as being real. When that happens, then you're in for many lifetimes. You pass from the body and out of your mind, thinking that everything that you just experienced was real. The negative, the positive, it was all real. And you don't say, oh, it was a dream. And now I'm on to the next dream. See, there's no consciousness of the passage of it. Then consciousness in association with Sankalpa contemplates denser states of matter. So you should be withdrawing from matter and saying that's empty, particles, you see, with no essence to it, you see. It can't fulfill me, and it changes all the time. It gets destroyed, and gets stolen. The objects that it's made of get stolen, or I get bored with them. Whatever the case is, I should withdraw from matter, and I shouldn't be contemplating it on deeper and deeper levels, thinking it's real. Long ago I should have given it up. I can still enjoy it. See, I can still move in it, savor it, as we were saying lately, but not if I'm attached to it. Not if I think it's real. I have to know that it's unreal. Unreal means changing, basically, in Vedanta. Longing for desire-based existence in an embodied condition leading to cycles of birth and death is the result, you see. So there's your Kala Chakra of Lord Buddha, or samsara, or Maya. On and on in lifetime after lifetime without ever knowing the self that looks on. Then experience of pain and acceptance of suffering as being real. We just said suffering is not real. You should resist not evil, right? And suffering has no substance. So you should not be considering it real, because then you're creating a disease without a remedy, you see. Then it becomes real and it takes you over. Like an incarnate devil becomes real. It's got horns and a pitchfork and it's after you, you see. When never was the case. It's an ideation of your own mind. Finally, fear and pain and attachment to pleasure leading to rebirth and ignorance. That's the cycle of Maya, you see. As Lord Vashishta lays it out for us. Now, let's savor that negative teaching during the break, and we'll come back and give it a positive turn and see how a person who comes and sports in the body, what he does or she does, called Lila Sankalpa. So here, let's break for 15 minutes. We welcome you back here to the second half of our second class of this visit in late winter, early spring, whatever it is right now. But we just got through a very major storm here in San Francisco, heavy rain, and now the sun has come out. So just like last night we were contemplating the rain cloud of the teachings in yesterday's class, now we have the sunshine of truth come from that. Dharma always leads to truth. And I would say, if I look around the world, most everything else doesn't. It may lead to some semblance of truth, or some reflection of truth, or some, like objects, some intimation of truth behind them, but you have to do some digging. That's what this physical life and this physical world is about. It's about going beyond appearances. And if you go to a yoga teacher, I'm not talking, of course, the popular Hatha Yoga, which is just body-oriented, but the real eight-limbed yoga, then the first thing they'll want you to do is to get a hold of your prana. Get a hold of your life force. Man does not live by bread alone. So you're going to have to know that everything operates by a subtler power than the apparent. So the prana is hidden in you. You don't see your food digest. You don't feel aren't conscious of your heart beating, your eyes blinking, and this is all going on by the 5 different kinds of prana in your body. And then there are 5 pranas in your subtle body too, just like there are 5 pranas in your gross body. In your mental body there are 5 pranas, and those are helping you think. They're helping you pass into dream and deep sleep tonight and come back out into waking state. That's called the upward moving prana. So these different kinds of pranas they want you to get a hold of right away. And once you do that, then you can concentrate, and that's the next thing they'll want you to do, is concentrate on reality, divine reality. Father of Yoga would put it this way, as we said. Be an aspirant, get intuitive wisdom, become masterful, and gain that perfection, which is your very nature. You're gaining something which is already yours, but you've just forgotten it. So that's what happens with the Mayic Sankalpic person who gets caught in this, as we just looked at. And let's look now in this, again, those of you following the text, the Holy Scripture, we're taking up sloka 8 and 9, basically, to where he mentions sankalpa. That is, Brahman associates itself with ego and sankalpa, and on account of that, the limitations of the ego. So the important word there is associates. This is association. This is identification. See? These identify with unreal things, and these only associate with unreal things. So it's a very, gratifying and revealing, especially if you're raised in a Western Judeo-Christian society where guilt is a big thing. You see, guilt and shame. I'm a sinner, and poor me, and I did bad, and so forth. And so quite often, if you get caught in that kind of trap, because in India the 3 great traps are grief and shame and remorse. You don't get caught in them. You don't have anything to do with them. It's a teaching, 3 great traps. So in Judeo-Christian upbringing, a lot of what you get caught into is grief and shame and remorse. And so to off-put that, then this idea of association with things that are impure or imperfect or mixed keeps you free of their insinuations. See, you only associate. So my teacher used to put it this way. Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, when he was alive, he said, many people come to Vedanta and they learn they must detach. So there's the lesson of detachment. The word is, in Sanskrit, Vairagya, good. Viveka first and then Vairagya later. So you learn the art of detachment, and so you learn how to detach. But then he said, later on when you get more advanced and more masterful, you learn to attach and detach at will. See? So he was a monk, so it was interesting for him to say that, because the monks are all detachment. But somewhere in him, and probably in most monks, they know that they have to attach momentarily to things. They have to, because they have to deal with people. So they're going to have to attach to certain people for a short amount of time. Like once we were being led around the Kasipur garden house where Sri Ramakrishna passed his last days by this beautiful old monk, Swami Tattvananda. And he was very cordial to us. I had a group of like 10 or 12 Americans with me, Vedantists. And we were going around. He showed us all the places and took us in front of the lines and was very graceful to us. And then we were leaving. And then he turned to us at the gate and he said, "It's been very beautiful knowing you and talking with you, but you know that as soon as you leave here, I'll never think about you again." You see? So, out of sight, out of mind, you know.
Wow.
That's not lack of compassion, because he was fully there for us when we were there. But when we're gone, you know, he's got another wave of people coming, right? So he's got to be identified with them or associated with them. So he lets go of his association and then can take it up. So that's a more advanced state of monasticism or even adeptship, you know, that you should be able to do the same with your job, with your children. I mean, I've seen the difference between people who coddle their children and people who love their children to death and then let them go. See? I mean, this happens daily. You take your children in your lap, you love them, you say, "Go away now." Out of sight, out of mind. See? "I don't want to see you again till next time." So there's no attachment, no sentimental attachment to them at all. And if you are a Christian, you should know that, because Christ said, your children are not your own. They're souls under your care, you know. So you treat them as souls under your care. And they may grow up and just spite you. May grow up and just cause you hell, you see. Milarepa has a song about that, the children of Samsara. I gave up the children of Samsara, the sons of Samsara, because first he seemed like an angel. Later on he caused trouble with the neighbors. Then I was his debtor, you know. I was in debt to him, you see. And in the end it was just, you know, a devil. So your very children, your very family, really are those problems called the ancestors that you're being reborn with all the time. And you could, if you had the power of detachment, you could stop that process. And if you stop the process, you could get off that wheel and help them. You cannot help them if you're a part of the problem, right? So you're being born with these same souls over again in families. That's what families are. They're souls that are attracted to each other. But that's not all that healthy. Even the good situations are not all that healthy, because anything that rids you of the knowledge of Brahman is not good. Doesn't matter what it is, love included. So you must keep that knowledge of Brahman. Like Holy Mother saying, you must have peace of mind first and foremost. Anything that causes you to lose your peace of mind, you renounce it. See? That includes money and property and children and family. You renounce it. Because you cannot do anything good for anyone if you don't have your peace of mind. You don't have your basic well-being, right? You're not good to anyone. So they may be bad to you, but you still have compassion for them. So the best thing you can do is withdraw yourself from them so you can help them, even against their worst wishes, you see. So that attaching and detaching at will is a very powerful thing. So these beings then, my point, rather long-winded and roundabout maybe, is that this is association with things unreal or things changing, and this is identification with them that leads to bondage. We've seen that. Let's see what somebody engaged in Lila Sankalpa does. It's divine will at sport. So first of all, there's the appearance of time, space, causation, mind, and intellect as cosmic principles. Remember, these are going across the board. So in Mike Sankalpa, you assumed them to be real. Here, you knew them to be cosmic principles. So you have knowledge of time, space, causation, and so forth. Here, they just whiz by you. You don't know where you are, care where you are, you don't know what time it is, or time gets by and you get old, and there's all these things that are going on in time, space, and causality, karma particularly, that you just really just let flow, you see. You go with the flow, which is one of these things you shouldn't do. You should resist the flow in most cases. If you got on a higher flow, then go with it. But you shouldn't go with this flow of samsara, this flow. And there's a beautiful song by Ramprasad where he says, to hope for help from friends, relatives, and family provides no real solution. Don't you know that everyone's lost here? Everyone lives in pallid imitation of everyone else. You noticed? Doctors become doctors, make their sons doctors, lawyers, and so forth. If you're poor, your son becomes poor. See? So there's just this pallid imitation going on all the time, and that's the realm, that's the world of Maya Sankalpa. And nobody tries to get out of it or think there's a higher way. So you resist the flow. You go against the grain. That's all about yoga, see, and renunciation of Vedanta and the emptiness of Buddhism and all these things. These are what they're telling you to do to get free. And we said earlier, those beings who have transcended nature, they're the ones that get enlightenment. Buddha, Patanjali, particularly, go out beyond nature, and it was a part of their teaching system. But those who are attached to nature, they get bound again and again and go around in cycles. You'll see them next time around, suffering the same as they did before, or enjoying, because enjoyment is a kind of suffering. So these are those blissfully negative teachings we like to savor in our mind. See, these make us feel good, teachings of renunciation. We know this is right. We know this is best. Good, best, and better. We know this is the highest for us. And if we can't quite attain it yet, we entertain it. See? If you don't attain it, you must entertain it, because once you entertain it, it'll begin to suggest itself to you on deeper and deeper levels, and you will get free. Maybe in one lifetime. I will be free. See, a great mantra. So, as cosmic principles, you know what I'm talking about? 24 of them. 5 elements, 5 senses, then 5 subtle elements in dream tonight, 5 subtle senses, 5-fold mind, 4-fold mind, if you will. Cosmic mind makes 5. So there's this sets of 5s. My latest book is called The Quintuplication Process. Cosmic Quintuplications, it's called. So it's the art of following 5s back to their origins. You connect the 5 senses, elements to the 5 senses, right? Water to taste, earth to smell, fire to sight, air to touch, and ether to hearing, right? Those are connections. Those are called vyahritis. And these are why people are thinking of the 5 elements. They think they're real. But these people are thinking of the 5 elements, and they're seeing them as cosmic connections. See? That's a difference. That's the great difference. These people know it's unreal, but that doesn't really matter to them whether it's real or unreal. What it means is they can use this as a way to get back to their source. Here, you're just not using them, and they're taking you away from your source. See? So, welcome to the realm of yoga and Vedanta, you know, and Tantra and Buddhism and Krishna's teachings and so forth. The path to freedom, the voice of freedom, Vedanta is called. It's a famous book now called Vedanta, the Voice of Freedom. It tells you what is true and pulls no punches. And Vedanta is just, you know, Buddhism and Tantra in its current form. Vedanta, especially Neo-Vedanta with Vivekananda on the scene, it's just rehashing in a new way all these ancient teachings. I've not come to destroy, you know, the teachings of the prophets, but to reinvent them, you see, to restore them. That's what Jesus said, and Krishna, thousands of years before Jesus, said, I come again and again to restore the Dharma that has declined. So I come again to restore it, you see. So Krishna, Christ, Krishna sounds like the same being to me doing the same thing. And always keeping these teachings current. So I hope you get that point. Considering all of this is real and seeing it just as a connection to get to reality. Basically what we're saying here. If you know them as cosmic principles, then you can meditate on them. Otherwise, they just flow. You go with the flow, as I said. And you think you're okay. I'm all right, you're all right. But nothing's all right in Maya. Nothing's ever all right in Maya. You know that. You feel it. Death is coming, depression is coming, problems are coming, happiness is coming, and then that will go. So you can't depend on anything, right? I'll be happy soon, but yes, then I'll be sad again after that, see? So you want something stable and unchanging, finally, in your life. The pole star of your existence, the foundation upon which you stand has to be stable, bedrock, not sand. So that's why this is a primary teaching in Sankhya Yoga and in Vashishta's Yoga. Okay, come down to this level. Jnanakasha, Chitakasha. The universes are modes of awareness. They're not locations in space and time. See, we're thinking of them as San Francisco in a house. This is a location in space and time now. No, it's a realm of consciousness. Like Sixon, our founder, used to be really big on that kind of teaching. He'd go around and just pull you out of your thinking that you were in some location in space and time and put you right back in the fact that you're in your own mind. This is your mind made manifest. All of this came out of your mind. It's ego-based ideation, you see. The ego is a part of the mind. So stop thinking that way. See this as consciousness itself. Didn't we say it's all Brahman? No matter where and what it is. So begin looking at it like that. Change your mode of thinking. Change your mental posture. Change your whole perspective and start calling it what it is. Even if you're not sure if it's that, then at least making the decision to do so will show you if it's true or not. That's the problem with being on the fence and not making a decision. It would be better for you to make the wrong decision than stay on the fence. Because the minute you made the wrong decision, you'd see that you were wrong. Everything would rise up and you'd see you did wrong. So you'd get back on the right side of the fence, you see. So you can't stay indeterminate, right? You must make that decision, right or wrong. And if you're well informed by the Dharma, you'll probably always make the right decision for yourself. Now, so it's Jnanakasha. It looks like Bhutakasha, realm of objects, but it's actually the realm of knowledge you're in. You're sitting amongst your own knowledge. This is an object, right, but doesn't it just contain infinite knowledge that you're hearing in classes? This is an object, but doesn't it contain megabytes of knowledge of the Dharma? At least mine does. I don't use it for anything else but Dharma. My computer is not used for anything else but creating these charts and for communicating the Dharma to students. So to me, these are objects of Dharma, you see. They're mind made manifest, used for the highest purpose, to awaken people up from their predicaments, to free them. And that's a very serious bit of business. You should probably try and do it while you're sporting, see. Because if I get all serious about all of you getting enlightenment, I'm going to be very disappointed. Right? It's like any other teacher. If you're a teacher, you think, oh, all my class is going to become perfectly. They're going to get A's. They're going to go on and be great scientists and great this and great that. Not. See? So, you just guide each one to the level that they go and you're satisfied. That's detachment and detachment, right? You attach to them while they're learning and you detach for the result. You see, you don't get attached to the fruits of your actions. It just said that. For reasons of pleasure. Because basically, you want them to be successful. Why? Because you taught them. See? They're my students. The whole ego is getting into it, you see. And then when they fail, you're going to fail. See, oh, I taught them. I'm a failure, you see. So the ego's got these two poles that it's going back and forth. You see. Pride and what's the opposite? Pride and depression or low self-esteem, right? So that's the ego's game, you see. But so you should be serious about serious things, but you should be playful at the same time. You're holding two ideals there, you see. Sort of like this little fella. He took seriously to get ignorance, egotism, attachment, aversion, and clinging life below him, you see, and to rid it other people. And he's not unhappy about it. He's dancing, you see. He's the eternal child. Now, come down another step, because across the board here was you thought they were Mayakasha, you see. You thought it was real, and it's not. But here you see, it's not that it's unreal, it's that it's just a manifestation of my own mind. That's what Sankalpa means, that these are manifestations of your mind. All of these schools are mind-only schools. And add Buddhism in there too. They're mind-only schools. That's all they believe in, is that the mind created everything. They don't believe in a creator God, a devil. The mind did it all. And the mind has ego in it, has thought in it, and it has intelligence in it. And that's the source of everything. As soon as the mind's gone, you're gone. Isn't it? Your mind's gone in deep sleep tonight, so you're gone. Your ego's gone, your senses are gone, your property might as well be gone. As soon as you die, mind disappears and dissolves, you're gone, you see. So the mind has to be present for any of this to be here. So when you take it away, this all disappears. So that's why they're so keen on it, and that's why they call themselves the mind-only schools. It's all due to mind, and they're going to get to original mind. See, they're going to get to purified mind. So you begin to see it that way. Now here, acquisition of an illumined guru and adherence to the spiritual path. As I was telling you at dinner last night, you find a teacher that you feel is telling you the truth. He prescribes to you the scriptures. You get on the path and you follow, and you never look back from that point. That's what I did with my teacher. Found him, never looked back ever again. And you must reach the goal of human existence that way. So on the other side, you would be relying on your mind ego. And that's why people are suffering. It's because they have no higher authority. The ego is their authority. The ego tells me what's right and wrong, good and bad, and so forth. And I don't accept any other authority other than myself. And that's self with a small s. Yeah, if you have realized the great self, you're your own guru. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that. The mind is its own guru, but only after it has realized the self. See? And then it can become the guru for others. But in the meantime, if the ego is still insinuating itself in the picture every time, and you know what happens when that, everything is not all right, everything is imbalanced, or balanced then imbalanced, or you're happy then sad, or you're going back and forth between these dualities, and you're still threatened by lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pain, pride, shame, suffering, delusion, called the 6 passions and the 8 fetters, then the ego is still there, you see. You haven't accepted a higher power yet. To accept it means that's the king of your life, you see. Krishna is my beloved, see. Jesus is my ultimate savior, see. Ramakrishna is my Ishtam, you see. And that's commitment to a high ideal that puts the ego to shame. Actually really diffuses the ego. It gets small, you see. And it's good that it gets small. Then, disciplined curbing of the mind's tendency towards sankalpa. So it knows pretty soon that all of this is a mental projection, and it begins to cut that out, see, like Krishna told Arjuna. It's a positive evil, you should be aware of it. So now it's not projecting anymore. It's, it's these great battles we talked about, you see. It's very on guard against the evil that may manifest if it begins to project. Because if it projects things, good will come, but evil will come as well. See? Virtue will come, but vice will come as well. Knowledge will come, but ignorance will come as well, because that's what's in the mind. That's why it's worth repeating here. The Christian saying, "And I turned within to behold wisdom, as well as madness and folly." That's the mind you're talking about. "Then I saw that wisdom excelled folly, like light excels darkness. And I invested myself with wisdom as a raiment of glory, and put her on my head as a crown of joy." See? So I gave myself up to wisdom, and I wore her as a raiment, and put her on my head as a crown of joy. But as I did, when I looked inside, I saw her, but I also saw folly. See? That's what the mind consists of. Good and bad, pleasure and pain, wisdom and folly. They're all there. It's not your fault. Actually, what it's the fault of is entering into the sankalpic process with a mind. Everyone enters into a mind. That's how they get into the body. The body isn't just a product of sperm and ovum by eating food, and turning into a fetus. The body was there in the concept, as a concept in the mind, before the parents were even selected. And then the body got formed as a result. in that way then curb that tendency. Because if not, deluded contemplation of things of the world as being real will take place, you see. And then you're creating a disease without a remedy. Now, finally, practice of yoga to remove the tendency for sankalpa and desire for objects of the world. You want to root it out at its very base. In other words, what you're saying there is, I'm pure, perfect, whole, and content all the time. I don't need objects. I don't need worlds. I don't need God. I myself am that, you see. And so I should depend on nothing external and probably nothing internal either. See, I should be beyond external and internal. Shankara has said that beautifully in the Vivekachudamani. Om drishyam pratitam pravilapayan san matram anandaganam vibhavayam, he says. Basically he says, Brahman is an indeterminable mass of pure conscious awareness. Therefore, take what's outside and what's inside and render them into one indivisible state. Then meditate on that state, pass your time contentedly, and be free. So really there's no such thing as inner and outer. There's just one interminable mass of pure conscious awareness that even the worlds are made of it, you see. And so why are you thinking inner and outer? That's going to have to go pretty soon. See? And you're going to have to render that into one state and meditate on it and pass your time contentedly. That's mental savoring, isn't it? Now there's nothing in the way of me just contemplating the oneness of my own intrinsic nature, see? Or the not two-ness, see? The not manyness. And that's where peace abides. That's the only place peace abides, in not two-ness. As soon as two happens, there goes your peace. Even in a perfect marriage, man and woman, there goes your peace. Especially when the ego's still in there. So you want to have that treasure of the oneness that like sand becomes a diamond before the wind. See? The treasure of the oneness that like sand becomes a diamond before the wind. All the vicissitudes and vagaries and dualities of life should turn your consciousness into diamond awareness, like the Buddhists say. You see? Pragyaparamita Sutra, the diamond cutter wisdom teaching. See? And you should be that confident and fully abiding in yourself all the time, with no substitutes. See? No masqueraders, no usurpers to the throne. See? That's freedom. If you move, so you do that with yoga, and you remove that tendency of sankalpa. I'm fine like this. I'm not going to let the mind go anywhere, except in meditation on oneness. See? If it ventures out, sankalpa, you see. If it ventures out, I better be very good at my sankalpa. I better take it as a play, as a sport, you see. And if it doesn't quite work out, let go of it quick, you see. Once you let go of a hot potato quick, see. So when thing turns in your sankalpic process, if you're into it and all of a sudden it begins to go sour, withdraw, you see. Witness. And that's why you meditate again every morning. So you look at your past day. Somebody insulted you, begins to nag at you. Pretty soon you have rancor building. Then you have hatred. Then you have vengeance, you see. Oh, before that even happens, before you get into that whole downward spiral, you meditate it away. Well, it doesn't matter. What he says is not true anyway. Why should I get bent out of shape by it? You see, you just neutralize it right there on the spot. True, some things are harder to neutralize than others. There's some very grave injustices going on that are very hard to surmount. But if you take these teachings literally, you'll know that everything is unreal ultimately. No matter how many Hitlers or Attila the Huns or whoever else comes to the world, nobody ever was born and nobody ever died. They were all the one soul at all times, and they just were playing. If they were playing in a good way, then they gave up their form and had no issues with it. If they weren't, then they got attached to the form and got born again and again in suffering, all the way down to in ignorance in rebirth. See? Wheat from the chaff again. Discrimination, detachment, vairagyam. It's just the watchword for Vedantists. And you never leave home without it. See? That's a very good statement, actually, because your home is Brahman, right? So if you do leave home, you should take your discrimination and your attachment with you. This very teacher, Lord Vashishta, was one of the 10 mind-born sons of Lord Brahma in the early days. Talks about that. The first disease is rebirth. That's his teaching. That's the first disease. Then, the essential part of that is, if you are reborn with discrimination, you can cure that disease. If you're born without it, then it turns into a disease without a remedy. You fall. So discriminating wisdom is the one thing you should leave home with. The only thing you should not leave home without is discriminating wisdom. Atman, knowledge of yourself. So you're playing in these fields of the Lord, right, as Jesus said. But you're playing all the time with knowledge that you are the Lord. See? You are one with your Father. And so that saves you from every situation, no matter how dire. So this is Vedanta, voice of freedom. Now if we go down here, attenuation of sankalpa via the practice of asamvedana, non-receptivity to desires. So pretty soon if you attenuate your desires through the practice of yoga, pretty soon you can gain that very rare state of asamvedana. I call it asamvedana. That means you're not receptive to desire anymore. Before you were trying to attenuate it or to fulfill it in some way, trying to satiate it, which is very difficult to do. It keeps coming back like fire, when you pour gasoline on it. So instead you eventually become non-receptive to it. Now I had to think of a metaphor for that, so I thought of there's a man sitting on a very peaceful lake, and he's got his toes in the water, see, and he's sitting there meditating. A mile or two across the lake, somebody drops a little rock in there, see, and a little set of waves comes across, you see. And it gets smaller and smaller, and finally it just laps against this man's toes, you see. Just the slightest little variation in the mind waves, you see. And so he feels that, you see. Or maybe say the idea of somebody walking along the railroad tracks, and every once in a while he puts his ear down, and pretty soon he can hear through the tracks a train coming miles away. So when it comes, he just steps off the track. So your karma is like this train that's headed for you, and it's going to, freight train style, mow you down. But if you have non-receptivity to your desires, it's like putting your ear to the tracks, and when it comes, you just step away, and the desires go by, and you have nothing to do with them. So it's a very rare art. Signature teaching, one of them, of Lord Vashishta, is asamvedana. It's one of the superior ways of dealing with your desires, if you can manage it. Desires, are quite rascally and hard to get over. Now, when I talk about desires, I'm not talking about hunger and thirst and all that. Those are, as long as you're not attached to hunger and thirst, you're just satisfying your basic everyday desires, that's no problem. See, everyone does that. Everyone has to eat, drink, and so forth. But these desires that are inordinate, that cause karma, that are based in jealousy and other passions and fetters and things like that, cosmic karma has to do with your ancestors and so forth, that you want to attenuate and cut out of the picture. Because across the board there, you're longing for desire-based existence. So I was saying at the dinner table last night after we had our prasad meal after the puja that there's one addictive substance in the universe. It's called prana, life force. If you're addicted to cocaine, it's the prana in the cocaine you're addicted to. If you're addicted to food, it's the prana in the food you're addicted to. If you're addicted to sexual act, it's the prana in the sexual act you're addicted to. It's life force everyone's after. That's why they're reborn. They want to live life in the body. See? So Vashishta comes along and he says, well, I don't know about that. I've experienced life outside the body and it's much better. But if you're going to do it, let's split this into two, you see, and show you how you could fall. If you're going to engage in sankalpa and vikalpa, how not to do it, see, and how you can do it and escape unscathed. See, be free of your desires at the end, and that's what we're getting to here. So, contemplation of all with the eye of abhava. Abhava yoga is the yoga of emptiness or non-existence. You see that everything is empty of substance, and you like it that way. See? Before desires and all that filled your life, right? Life force filled your life. Running after things, enjoying things, having passion for things, passion for art, passion for music, passion for this and that. And pretty soon it ran your body ragged. And pretty soon you couldn't enjoy life force anymore. Your organs couldn't take it. Your eyes died and your organs went bad, you see. And prana couldn't be enjoyed anymore. That's why prana is not Brahman. The two are different. People sometimes mistake life force for God, nature for God. You see. No, that's not true at all. So this ability then is very important to see everything as empty and to be happy with that emptiness. That's abhava yoga. Everything, is formless and it's non-existent. And when I see it as non-existence, I know there's only one existence there. That's myself. Now, can I, like the yogi in the cave, just sit there happy for days without anything? Or like the man on the mountain, so he climbed the mountain, can I just stay up there and camp for days without the world? Can I be happy? Can I be content? Is probably a better way of putting it. So yes, I can, and I find that I prefer it. You see, I retired from society into the woods, and I'm Walt Whitman, and I became a hermit, you see, and I found that I actually like that better than going into the city and having truck with society and so forth. So you begin to prefer this path of the alone to the alone, see, because that's the truth of it. That there aren't many souls, there's just one soul. And that people who are thinking there are many souls and many objects and many worlds and they're actually real are engaging in illusion. Sankalpic, mayic sankalpa, see, power of obscuration. They're putting all sorts of things over reality and calling them reality. Oh, now my child's God, and now my pleasures are God, and angels are God, and whatever fancy of my imagination I can create, that's God. And none of it was God ever, because God is always formless. So I prefer the formless now, you see. And that was Lord Buddha. Swami Vivekananda called him the greatest soul that ever visited Earth. So Lord Buddha was this completely solo being. Two things he said toward the end of his life were very beautiful. He said, "O architect of Maya, I have seen thee. Now that I've seen thee, I will not build homes anymore. I will not build homes of wood. I will not build homes of stone. I will not build homes of flesh and bone. And I will not build homes of wise ideation, see, from the mind. Create worlds of name and form out of my mind. I'm done with that. I'm gone and gone forever." So this is the kind of soul you find when you contemplate an Ishtam, like Lord Buddha. You have to be ready for that. You see, a person who's just absolutely pure Buddha nature, perfect and pure all the time, without any desire for anything, ever. And so, what can you do but this, and bow? Take refuge in the Buddha, take refuge in the Sangha, I take refuge in the Dharma, Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva. The lines of a song. So that's the triple refuge, the triple gem. You take refuge in those, like we're saying here in our tradition, Guru, scriptures, and your practice, your spiritual practice. That's all you need, ever. Let the world go on as it will then. See? Let the dream continue in other people's minds, but you wake up. Samvedana and Abhava, very much signature teachings of Lord Vasishtha. Finally, in this Lila Sankalpa, there's the attainment of samadhi and absorption into Brahman. Of course, that's the end of all of these, getting samadhi. Non-dual samadhi. It's Satori in Zen, it's Asampragyata in yoga, it's Nirvana in Buddhism. In Muslim, it could be called Fana. Maybe in Christianity, you could call it beatific vision. Whatever the case, every religion has its seers, and it has its description of that unique state, which is formless with a capital F. It's beyond nature, it's beyond ideation, it's beyond sankalpa. So this person who does Lila Sankalpa is going through that, nirvana, sadhana, and realization. Their life is based on that. They're born with the idea of their innate perfection. They practice sadhana in life to remain aware of it, because it can go away if you're not careful. And then they get realization at the end of their life and return to Brahman. See, that's the whole mode of Lila Sankalpa. But this poor soul starts out in samsara, that is, the rounds of birth and death and ignorance. That is, the last lifetime he came from was ignorant. So this lifetime is ignorant too. See, born with samskaras. And then spends his life in worldly preoccupations and becomes complacent. See, and then it's reborn again in the wheel of time. Kala Chakra, Lord Buddha called it. Kala Chakra, the wheel of birth and death. Dragged from birth to death and death to birth, the soul. So Vivekananda mentions that in his song of the Sannyasin. Let darkness go, the will of the wisp that leads with blinking light to pile more gloom on gloom. This thirst for life, forever quench. Good, you know it. This thirst for life, forever quench. It drags from birth to death and death to birth the soul. They conquer all who conquer self. That is, they conquer the lower self for the higher self. Know this and never yield. Sannyasin bold say, Om Tat Sat Om. Yeah. So one of the beautiful verses of the Song of the Sannyasin. Then it only remains for us here to read the last quote by Lord Vasishtha. By Atmic Sankalpa is meant divine will and manifestation, but it can degrade into Mayic Sankalpa via ego-based ideation that arises as a result of falsified relationship between the subject and the object. Falsified relationship, it's very yogic. Patanjali talked it the same way. There's the subject and the object, or sometimes he called it the seen and the unseen. And then I added, it's the seen and the unseen that turns into the obscene. But the seen and the unseen, the problem with that is the seer has become attached to what is seen. And so the seen becomes the master and the seer becomes the slave. Just like at people watching TV. I heard just the other day from someone, I go over to their house, they sit all day, every day, 24 hours watching the TV. Fall asleep in their chairs. See? 4 or 5 of them in there, you see. That's their life. So, I mean, you could say, horrible, horrible, but basically what it is that the seer, this great soul inside of each of them, has become attached to the seen. See? And the seen is not real. Only the seer is real. You are real, not what you project. This is all projection, right? This is based on mind-only schools. This isn't based on evolution, that the worlds are real and take 4 billion and 3 million, 20 million years to form, and then you finally visit them somewhere in there for however long before you destroy it, you see, or pollute it. This is based on the fact that this is always ongoing, that there is no such other thing than consciousness. It's just a matter of how it's manifesting or not. But in the end, it's all consciousness. And that's why that's a great teaching. All of this is just the Gyanakasha. It's not the Bhutakasha at all. It's made of wisdom. It's not made of matter. I reject that matter is real. Because when I look at matter with an electron microscope, I see it's not. So why should I believe in appearances, you see? I should create 2 electron microscope glasses and walk around so that I remember this. You see everything swirling all the time. You see, and no place to lay your head. Right? Birds have nests, foxes have holes, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. See? Jesus knew this. He was a prime renunciate, Jesus. He didn't come to bring peace, he came to bring a sword and separate Father from Son, because the Father believed and the Son didn't, or vice versa, whatever the case may be. One was doing Maya Sankalpa and the other was doing Lila Sankalpa. So he wanted to give those who were doing Lila Sankalpa a hand up. You're doing right, come, get enlightenment, join me, you see. Join all the seers. I was driving through the streets of San Francisco yesterday and I saw on the graffiti on the wall, "Take refuge in Christ alone." So I almost got out of the car and went up and erased the word alone. You see. Yes, take refuge in Christ, but there are many, many other great souls, just as great, like Lord Buddha, whom you can take refuge in. And billions of people are doing so every lifetime, and getting free. They're getting free through Buddhism. They're getting free through Vedanta. In fact, Vedanta, that's all it talks about is freedom. It's all it wants for you. So, we take a little visit to Lord Vashishta's neighborhood. It's not Mr. Thomas's neighborhood, and it's not Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. It's Mr. Sattva's neighborhood and beyond. That's Lord Vashishta, you see. All right, I told you that we were going to come to the end of chapter 5, and we will, because the next slokas that lead up to the end, we're taking all at once. Let me read them to you. Those of you following the text, we're starting with chapter 5, sloka 10. That Brahman is neither female nor male nor neuter. Whatever body it assumes, it becomes identified with that. By desire, contact, sight, and delusion, the embodied soul assumes successfully various forms in various places according to its deeds, just as the body grows nourished by showers of food and drink. The embodied self chooses many forms, gross and subtle, based on the qualities belonging to itself, and to its actions, and to the mind. The cause of their combination is found to be still another cause. That is, the real cause is Brahman behind everything. But they're living by the cause of their ego and their mind alone. They're not giving themselves to Brahman or realizing Brahman. They're just worshipping the ego, basically, and following its dictates. Realizing that one who is without beginning or end, who creates the cosmos in the midst of chaos, who assumes many forms, and who alone envelops everything, one becomes free from all fetters. So you see how consciousness can either identify, it says, or it can assume, you see. And so the trick there, if you're going to remain in form, is to assume and give up. Assume and give. Attach and detach at will. And be that masterful as to be able to do that. And that takes us up to the end. So in the remaining teaching, well, let's read the last sloka. That supreme divinity who created both life and matter, who is the source of all arts and sciences, who can be intuited by a pure and devout mind, this intuition, realizing that the blissful and incorporeal and nameless one is freed from further embodiment. Realizing that the blissful, the incorporeal, and the nameless one is freed from further embodiment. So that's what I said earlier. Vedanta, Yoga, Tantra, Buddhism wants you up and out of the body, no doubt. No bones, no punches pulled. Are you having fun here? And if you are, how long is it going to last? You should take seriously this nameless, formless essence, which is your very self, your very Atman, your very Buddha nature, your very soul, the Almighty Spirit, the Almighty Father within you. You should take that extremely seriously. If you come here at all into form, try and do it this way. And many people, I admit, do that. They're here to see if they can realize God amidst the worst of circumstances. Because if they can realize God here, they can realize it anywhere. You see? You know what I mean? You're a musician. Even in New York, New York. So, and our teacher, like Sixon, did that. He lived most of his life in New York, and he was a thoroughly illumined person. So, the founder of RSRV. So, that's a great lesson, freed from further embodiment. So, question it. Question the flow of things, and practice formless meditation. Cut time down and away. Get rid of cause and effect, which is karma. And look at space as being nothing but the wisdom of the mind. See, that's how you deal with Maya. Maya is name, form, time, space, and causality. Those 5 things are Maya. That's Vivekananda's great definition for the word. When other people were calling it illusion, he was saying, no, it doesn't cut it, you see. Because these things are real as long as you are here experiencing them. They seem real to you. So you can't tell people, pull the carpet out from under and say, oh, it's all illusion. For most souls, that's not going to work. See? There might be a few mighty souls that can do that, like Buddha and so forth. All right, I'll accept that. I'll give it up. But for most people, you're going to have to take them by those stages, you see, and convince them. And Vishishta was a master at that. Sri Ramakrishna was a master at that. Teaching people by avastas. Avasta means stages. So like I said, this last 5 or 6 slokas, and we have 15 minutes left, gives us just enough time to deal with those 5 slokas. As it's talking with the rebirth process. So this old war horse, because a lot of people have, in fact, I even got an email just a couple days where this all got hashed up again. A professor in Hawaii who comes to my classes wrote me and wanted to know everything about the rebirth process. He was getting very interested in that. Of course, we know probably the authorities in this day and age on rebirth are the Tibetan Buddhists, no doubt. They've examined the bardos between birth and death and between death and rebirth, and the Tibetan Book of the Dead has been created, and they've become masterful at guiding souls out of the body at the time of death and into their next birth, or taking them toward the light of the Buddha, Buddha nature. Tibetan Buddhism is sort of centered, focused around that art of conscious rebirth. And that's why you have bodhisattvas and people living many lives in consciousness, you see. And they're masters of life and the remover of miseries of the devotees. We chanted that last night. Oh, Sri Ramakrishna, you're a master of life, you're a remover of the miseries of the devotees. Please accept our offerings. See. So, in terms of these last 5, I won't read them again because some of you have the sloka. It has all been talking about, after this sankalpa process, how to get out of the body and get back into a conscious body in a better state, or to give up the body and be able to transcend it altogether and just be a hailstone that falls in the ocean. You're back to your essence, no problem. My teacher used to quip about that. Since everything is a manifestation of the mind in these schools, then he says, no mind, no matter. No matter? Never mind. That's how he used to put it. In other words, so no mind, there's going to be no matter, because mind creates matter. So you have been raised in science, so you don't believe that maybe. But actually this is how the wisdom schools think. All of this came from the mind. Via sankalpa. See, that's why we studied it just now. It's ego-based ideation, projection. And it goes away tonight in deep sleep and death and so on. I mean, you can prove it in many ways if you'll just think about it. See? So no mind, no matter. And if there's no matter, never mind. Because matter is what's giving you the problem, isn't it? Attachment, desire, pleasure, these are problems. And people get attached to them. And like the TV, or food, or sexual act, or whatever we were just talking about, all of those things are their life. See? They become their very life. So you might say suffering isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. The worst thing that can happen to you is to lose your blissful nature. Because what are you missing out on? Just look at Sri Ramakrishna's eyes. in that picture that Disney Studios took for us and removed all the imperfections out of that 1860s or 1870s picture, you see, and just removed all the little specks and came out with this picture. You just see Sri Ramakrishna's eyes, they're just swimming in bliss. We've never seen a being like that. It's the first time God was ever photographed. Because there he is in Sri Ramakrishna. There Brahman is manifesting in Sri Ramakrishna like that Ishvara form, you see. And just to look at that picture is enough for you to know, oh, that person is in another state, you see. And there's a funny story that when Sri Ramakrishna saw a picture of himself, he didn't know what he looked like. He didn't have a mirror or things like that. He was very, very unattached to his body. So he saw, Holy Mother had a picture of him that someone had taken without him knowing it. And so he saw that picture on her mantle one day when he peeked his head in her room to wake her up for meditation or something. And he took that picture and looked at it and said, this picture shows a man in a very high state of samadhi. He wasn't even talking about himself. And he said further about that picture, I don't know if it was then or later, this picture will be worshipped around the world by millions of people. Imagine saying that about a picture of yourself. But that's exactly what happened. 5 million people now have that picture on their mantle, on their altar. They're offering flowers and incense to it. They're meditating before it. Talk about prophecy. Self-fulfilling. Self-actuated, really. So it's an amazing phenomena. Avatar always is whenever he comes, and we have a hard time recognizing him because we're engaged here, you see. The world is more important. But God comes to tell you that the world's not that important, that you should play in the fields of the Lord and then just be free, you see. Whether you're in the form or not, just be free, that's all. Sounds simple, but you can make it very complicated, and people do. So in the remaining 10 minutes now, here's this chart which shows some of the statements of the Holy Mother, Sri Ramakrishna's divine consort, that kind of satisfy some of the questions that we tend to ask about the rebirth process. We can, that is, believe in it, have faith in it. We might even recall past lifetimes we've had if we meditate. But there's these little kinds of questions that arise in it. So she answers them. After a birth in a human body, some attain salvation in this lifetime, whereas others take inferior births to reap the results of their karmas. Not all can be free from desire. The creation is going on because all cannot be free from desire. But that indeed is the last birth, in which one gets rid of desires completely. One will not have to come again. So nice coming on the tail of Vasishta's teaching about desires, how to be non-receptive to them, how to attenuate them, fulfill them and be through with them and so forth, not to cling to them and so forth. So, and inside of that statement, she does admit that desire is pretty much at the root of rebirth, but she also has this teaching that you can take inferior births. And that actually goes in corroboration with Sri Krishna in the Gita. He says there's many wombs you can be born in. And you know the joke I'm going to use, right? Some are wombs with a view, and some are not. But whatever the case may be, you could even be born in animal wombs. That's the implication. I think both the Buddhists and the Hindus, depending on the school, kind of concur about that. Human consciousness can actually revert back to animal consciousness. And if you've owned an animal, loved an animal, and so forth, you kind of know that there's some sort of soul in there, you see. And maybe some kind of even higher consciousness and intelligence is in there a bit, you see. So anyway, that's speculative, but it's inferred. Let's put it that way. That there are many wombs to be born in. Besides, why vex over it? There are many animals that are living much better lives than many humans. Like animals in Japan, where they're dressed and fed and they have their own graveyards and things, where people on the street are cast away. See, don't care what happens to them. So, nothing to vex over, something to speculate about, but she does infer that kind of thing by saying, some take inferior births, others get salvation. And then she says, many a time a man takes birth and dies again and again in a certain family due to his karma. That's a very valuable thing to know. again and again in the same family. So it's not like, oh, there's some random thing out there, I can just be born here and there. Not unless you're talking about conscious birth, the palette of conscious birth. That changes the whole scene. But for most people, it's not just, oh, let's take a chance and maybe I'll be born in a better family or with someone else or in another country or something. It's more scary than that. You're tied into the same people that you were born with and that you lived with in a previous lifetime most often, like packs of whales and packs of wolves and pods of whales and, you see, gaggles of geese and so forth. You see, these souls are usually coming back as the same thing, and in the human context, which is more intelligent and more sensitive and more complex, the brain, the mind complex, there are a lot of subtler attachments in the human condition that and sentiments and love and hate. All you have to do is look at the kings and queens of England or Europe to know how much they love each other, how much they hate each other at the same time, how they'll give land away, then take it away the next year. You see, how precarious that kind of life is, and how persnickety and imbalanced it can be. So, anyway, this is an interesting and important point. Born into the same family due to its karma, you see. Not too bad a scenario when you love your family, although there's always some sort of hair in the ointment there. Someone in the family maybe don't love you and you don't love them either. But whatever the case may be, that's a general rule. She goes on, but one should not blame God for this. Another beautiful facet of her teaching. God has nothing to do with rebirth. God is birthless and deathless. So you don't drag God down into form, into karma. It's free of those things. Keep it sacrosanct, keep it pure, as it is. Sri Ramakrishna said, Brahman is the only thing in existence that has never been defiled by the tongue of man. So let's leave it that way. And Vivekananda came along afterwards and he said, you don't drag God down to your comfort zones, you raise yourself up to Brahman. See? You can't bring it down because it enters into the dangers of sankalpa if you do consciousness. It gets limited, conditioned. So rather, you raise yourself up to perfection. And that's exactly what you're doing, in any given lifetime where you're seeking. Sadhana, right? If sadhana is always a part of your lifetime, spiritual practice, then you're always seeking that ultimate essence. She goes on, everyone reaps the effects of their own actions. That's in relation to do not blame God for this. Everyone reaps the effects of their own actions. And though one may have to take on a new body, one does not necessarily lose spiritual consciousness if one has one's merit credits from previous births. Merit credits, like the punya papa of the Buddhism, merit, demerit kind of thing. So you don't lose your consciousness if you do these practices and so forth. You retain remembrance of this. People are calling that on a surface level déjà vu. You see, they have a kind of a remembrance of something that happened in another lifetime. Walking around the earth, and they go to Europe and they hit some place maybe where they had a lifetime where they associated with that and all, or catch a fragrance of incense somewhere at some ashram, and all of a sudden they remember something profound that happened to them. You see, a déjà vu. But it's much deeper than that, of course. When you start actually meditating upon your mind, you'll find out all these lifetimes were back in it, and you'll begin remembering them. Krishna said to Arjuna, Arjuna, you and I have both lived many lifetimes. You don't remember any of yours. I remember every one of mine. I remember every one of mine. I got this wisdom from Vivasvat, he said. Vivasvat lived, Arjuna said, how could you do that? He lived lifetimes ago. He's hundreds of years older than we are. And then Krishna said, I've lived many lifetimes. I can trace myself back to that, you see. So it's a divine remembrance that comes forward. It's all stored back in your, if you want to put it that way, subconscious mind, or in the causal body. You need to recall it. And when you do recall that kind of thing, you won't seek knowledge outward anymore. You'll find it all within you. I was saying that to people in college classes a couple months ago. I said, I see you're here in class again. Why? The teacher's nervous, You've learned all this already. Why are you back here doing it again? It's all within you. Let's break down these walls and take people out in nature. They'll learn more there than in a classroom. That's what Vivekananda wanted to do. Schooling the grades should be abolished. The older should take care of the younger and teach them. The younger should look up to the older's ideals and get them out in nature, and then teach them the Dharma out in nature. You see, not this way everything is now. It's constricted, based in knowledge that's only a breadwinning, gives you a breadwinning education later. Sri Ramakrishna walked out of school, in the grade school. He would never, we call him illiterate now, but he tapped into the perennial wisdom and was the most knowledgeable person we know. See, and he never took a year of schooling, as it were. So that's going with the flow or not, you see, as we were saying earlier. So you see how all of these teachings give rise to so much. Now, about these three, and then we'll end here. Here's the immanent world with the physical body, and you can throw the astral body in there too. And then the transcendent world with the subtle body and the causal body, and then the true being called the Atman, the absolute world. So these are called the three worlds. They're very famous. In another sense, you could say Bhur Bhuva Swaha. In the beginning of the Gayatri mantra, it speaks of the three worlds. So you could call it immanent, transcendent, and absolute. Three worlds inside of you. General classification of the kingdoms of heaven, which are many more. Or the lokas or akashas of Tibetan Buddhism. But if you want a general overall triputi for it, it's just immanent, transcendent, and absolute. So she says here, people here in the physical world, people with desires take their births again and again. Afterwards they go to other planes and experience pleasure and pain, and in the course of time are born again in human form. Well, that's heaven to earth. Heaven to earth. Maybe throw a little hell in there. See? So the Vedantist doesn't want that. And it doesn't want a post-mortem emancipation where you get free after you die. You want to be free right now because you are free right now. And that's the truth of the matter, so step up. You see. Declare it. You can even put it on falsely. Say, I am free. And you don't feel you're free, but say, I am free, and just see what happens. See? The ego will start saying, well, actually, I kind of like the sound of that. Maybe I am free. And then all of a sudden you'll be thinking in terms of freedom and not bondage. See? They read Sri Ramakrishna a little bit of the Bible, and he said, stop, after a page or two. He says, they're talking about sin all the time. Man should never hear about sin. He should always hear about his eternal perfection. So you water the flowers in my tradition, not the weeds. Or if you want, take water away from the weeds. And let the flowers bloom. In the causal subtle body, we'll go a few extra minutes here. All people, excepting some highly advanced souls, live in a spirit body for a year after death. The spirit body can be likened to a body made of air. So she uses that as a metaphor, of course, but it's the subtle body she's talking about. It's a mental body you live in. You go into it in dream tonight, so you're aware of it. But when the silver cord is cut, you see they say there's a silver cord that holds the soul into the body. So that's one way of teaching. But when that gets cut at the time of death, it snaps. Then everything that was in the physical goes back to the subtle, you see. And this seemed real to you when you're in the physical body. Now this doesn't seem real to you anymore. It becomes a matter of past memory. And you're in your subtle body and that seems real. Call it heaven, or call it a higher world. Some people go to higher planes of existence, she says. So you say, a lot of people might take rebirth after a year, or some people might take rebirth after 100 years. In the case of those who take longer to re-embody, they don't remember much. You see, everything has changed by the time they come out again. Locations, houses, cities, people they knew. So after 100 years, you take a rebirth again, and you're walking around like, this is all new. But if you come back sooner, you're pretty much a more enlightened soul. You see, you have work to do. You have some karma to finish up, maybe. Or you have to be about your Father's business, as Jesus said. So you can incarnate. Incarnation, that is, depends on the soul, the time frame. And ignorance or lack thereof, or complete freedom from, predicates the whole matter. Let's read the last one and we'll end. Only those who belong to a high spiritual category can be renunciates and gain liberation from all kinds of fetters. I bless you, she says, so that you may attain liberation in this life. Birth and death are extremely painful. May you not suffer from them anymore. And another time she said, may you not be reborn in the body ever again. And when I first heard that, that's when I bowed to her, you see. And not all these other women teachers out there who are trying to make everything all right with the world. She wanted you up and out of the body and all its suffering. So I bowed to her, and I took refuge from her, and I took initiation from her student, Swami Shishananda, from her disciple, and never looked back, you see, because that was the ring of freedom to me. The voice of freedom was there in her voice. And he used to tell us when we were with him, I've heard her voice, I've seen her face, now I long for her grace with all my heart. So a woman, wife of Shamakrishna, affected this monk very deeply. So it's a very wonderful thing. So here let's end with our closing chant, although we could easily end with those words of Holy Mother. Om Tachnayo, Om Tachnayo Ravrini Mahe, Gatung Yagyaya Gatung Ye Nupataye, Daivi Svastrastu Naha, Svastir Manusebhyaha, Urdvam Jigatu Besajam, Sangno Astu Dvipade Sangchatushpate, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we make a sincere offering of the small self into the great self. May we always revere that offering. May we always rejoice in sacrifice to the Mother of the universe and the great Lord. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace be unto the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity also then abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.